Saving your files is going to be made probably about 1,000,000 times easier if you download and install GIMP's Save for Web plugin. Now, I've done that. If you go into the File menu and you don't see Save for Web, that means that it's not installed, but you can just look for the video on how to download and install that, and then you'll be good to go. So, you might ask, why do we need a Save for Web option when nothing that we're creating is actually ever going to go on the web? Well, saving for web means two things. Number one, it specifically deals with images that are going to a screen. And number two, when you put images on the web, you really need to keep the file size as low as possible. Now, when we put images into our PowerPoint, that's an excellent thing to do because when you've got maybe 100 slides, if your images are all big, then you can end up with these massive sized PowerPoints. So particularly when saving images for PowerPoint, this is a really great feature. So you just go File, Save for Web. And the first awesome thing about Save for Web is that you get this huge preview window. So I can zoom right out, I can zoom in. You can actually change the size of this preview window if you want. And what you'll see in this top left corner is that there are currently 4 available options. So we spoke about JPEG earlier, and when you select JPEG, you get the same quality slider that you had in the normal Save As dialog. And again, there you can see the file size, and you can see a preview of what your image is going to look like. So if you really put the quality down, you can see that the file size has dropped right down to 59 kilobytes, but if we really zoom in, you can see how that there's a bit of this kind of choppy effect, whereas if we take the quality right up, things look a lot better. Once you've got your quality set to what you want, incidentally, if you're preparing this image for print, it's just as easy to save it here. You don't need to save it in the Save As dialog box. It will produce the exact same result. You simply click Save, and then you get the normal Save Image dialog. So you can browse for folders, and you can choose a location for where you want to save this file, for example, the desktop, say. You can name your file, and then you simply click Save. And what you'll also notice is, as opposed to when we used File Save As, we didn't get this message about exporting the file. That's because the Save for Web plugin just does it automatically, which is a much better way to work. So you're not at risk of making the mistake of ruining your original file. It saves a copy as whatever settings you choose. And you don't have to go through the irritation of reading that message every time. So that's JPEG. What I want to show you now is GIF. So if you go File, Save for Web, I can now choose GIF. And when you're saving GIFs, the Save for Web plugin is really 1,000,000 times better than the normal Save As box for 2 reasons. Number one, you get this preview, which you don't get otherwise. And number 2, you can actually reduce the file size. So we see here the file size is 631 kilobytes. Well, you can actually change that by changing the number of colors. So this number of colors is kind of like the quality slider that you had under JPEG. It doesn't work in the same way, but it'll also reduce the quality and the file size. So as you can see, GIF is not the greatest option for images like photographs because it doesn't have enough colors to convey all of these slow, gradually changing colors. And 256 is the maximum. And you can reduce this. So if I take this down to 32, for example, and hit Tab, you are going to see that the file size is much smaller, just 205, so that's about a third, but we're getting even less colors. I could take this, for example, right down to something like 4. Now you can see that you are limiting GIMP to using just 4 colors to make up this image. So you've got this kind of pink, the purple, the brown, and this sort of orange shade. but of course your file size is tiny. And if I like this result, I could just click save, but obviously I don't, and GIF is not a good option, as I've said, for something like a photograph. So let me just close out of there. If on the other hand you have something like this Rubik's Cube, you really want GIF because you want to get this transparency to stay that way. You don't want this to be filled in by a white background. So if you go File, Save for Web, and then choose GIF as your option, we can now see that the file size is already 1,000 kilobytes. Now that's because this is a very big image. As you can see, at 100% it's massive. So the first step, if this was going into a PowerPoint, would be to actually scale this image down. But just to show you how this will work. At the moment, the number of colors is grayed out because I'm saying reuse existing palette. That's because this was already an indexed image, so it already had a color palette associated with it. If I click Generate Optimum Palette, I can then change the number of colors. So let's say that I took this down to something like 128, and I hit Tab. You'll see now that the file size has come down a fair bit, and we still look pretty good as far as these shiny areas go. And to be honest with this image, I'm not really worried about these in any case. So I could bring this number of colors down even more, maybe to something like 64, and click Tab. And again, we're going to get an updated preview. We can see now we've brought the file size down to just 612. And things are still looking fine, so I can do something much more drastic. And I can go down to something like 8 colors. And we can see how that works out. Now here you can see 8 doesn't work out quite so well. We get a bit of this sort of dithering pattern. So we could then go to something like 16 and 32, and you can just keep going until you get the balance that you are looking for. So if I wanted to save this, I would just click Save, choose a location, for example desktop, name my file, cube.gif, and click Save. You'll notice that the original file we were working from is unchanged, so it's a duplicate that's been created and saved with my settings. And I can now take that image, which is sitting on my desktop, and put it into a PowerPoint with a see-through background.